Hey class, welcome to Philosophy 2033, Logic and Critical Thinking. I'm going to be your professor this semester. My name is Dr. Brian Harding, and I'm going to take a few minutes to just welcome you to the class, tell you a bit about it, and maybe about myself. And so let's start with the class. So logic is a fundamental discipline in all other academic disciplines or things that you might study. In the Middle Ages, they referred to logic as the ars artium, the art of arts, and the scientia scientiarum, which would be the science of sciences. What does that mean? It means that in anything that you do where you're trying to make sense and you're trying to understand things or explain things, you're going to use logic. So what we're going to do in this class is look at the sort of the basic rules of explanation and understanding. How should we analyze questions and answers and sort of problems and solutions to see whether or not they make sense, to see whether or not they are cogent or valid arguments and answers. Now, because logic is so fundamental, it's sometimes hard to start with it because rather than sort of having sort of one concept that then builds to the next one, to the next one, to the next one, logic is more of like a web of interrelated concepts. And it's hard to talk about one without talking about the other. So in the beginning of the class, you're going to get introduced to a lot of terms very quickly, like premise, conclusion, argument, valid, invalid, sound, cogent, weak, strong, and all of these have technical meanings in sort of in logic. And in a way, it's only when you understand the meanings of all those words that you really understand what logic is. But for now, we can just say that logic deals with the rules for correct reasoning and with identifying various forms of incorrect reasoning. Logic has an ancient history. As long as there have been people that spoke with one another and argued with one another and explained things to one another, there has been people using logic. But just like in a similar way, one could say that grammar is as old as language, right? Anytime you have two people talking to each other using language, there's a grammar to that language. The grammar to that language might not have been written down and made explicit, right? It may have been an oral culture, so they didn't write down rules of grammar, but there nevertheless was an implicit grammar that the speakers of those languages used. In the same way, there's an implicit logic to everything that we do. And one of the fun things about logic is that everything I'm going to teach you in this class, there's a sense in which you already know it. You just don't know that you know it. And you can compare that with grammar, right? If you know how to speak a language, you know the grammar. You just might not know that you know the grammar. And one way of understanding what you do when you study grammar is you try to make explicit the rules that you implicitly knew. And similarly in logic, we're going to try to make explicit the rules of correct reasoning that you already know. So I know that might be a little dizzying and a little confusing, but trust me, it'll all make sense shortly, but really the best way to learn what logic is to do it. And now I'm going to have to move because there's a guy mowing the lawn. Okay, so I moved now to the front of the house, and if you're wondering why I'm not doing it in the house, it's because of COVID, and I have all my kids home because they're not in school. So once you get into the readings and start doing logic, you'll understand what it is. And as I was saying before, you'll hopefully recognize that many of this stuff you knew implicitly, and we are just making it explicit. So that's the basic definition of what logic is. Now let me tell you a little bit about myself. Obviously you've seen my garage, and now you can see the front of my house. I've lived in this house for about 14 years, and I've worked at TWU for the same amount of time. Prior to that, I was in Ohio and then in Atlanta, and I did my doctorate at Fordham University in New York City. And now they're mowing the front. So I did my doctorate at Fordham University in New York City, and my focus then was on medieval philosophy, and in particular, I took a number of courses with a scholar named Julia Klima on medieval logic. And so one of the things that you'll notice as we go through this class is I'll talk about sort of the history of logic a lot, because that's one of my interests. The syllabus and everything you'll find online, and I don't want to get into the details of the syllabus and things like that in this video, because those things are best put in writing as opposed to, in a video. So take a look at the syllabus and the course requirements and things like that. And the last thing I'll say before I let you go is that there are no books to buy for this class. Everything that you need for this class is provided to you free on Canvas. And so while there's a lot of different texts, and we might jump around from different texts to things, but everything is free. And I'll touch base with you then.